So there I was, watching the new DC Blue Beetle trailer, and something stirred within me. While watching a heavily CGI'd, goofy-looking Blue Beetle prance around the screen, it reminded me of something I'd long forgotten, a part of my childhood that quite equally could be real, or just some fever dream from a night of too many beers back at university. It was a memory of a time when superheroes on my screen weren't green screen monstrosities, but were instead some poor underpaid actor would sweat away in 100 degrees as a voiceover played over the top of his action scenes. Production assistants would let off flashbangs and flares to the side. Of course, I was thinking of 90s children's TV, and in this instance, something stranger than anything that greets us on our screens today. So let's travel back to the 90s. The 90s. A colourful time. A much simpler time. Yep, a much, much simpler time. Nothing epitomised the 90s childhood rather than dodgy signal TVs watching clunky, dramatic, Japanese-inspired graphics and action set pieces to Western audiences, and over-the-top PG-13 action to top it all off. Perfectly captured and eternally great in the now legendary status that was particularly the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But there was another, one which every child loved, and yet somehow has been removed from the collective memory of those who watched it. I'm of course talking about Big Bad Beetleborgs. Now, Big Bad Beetleborgs was not alone in riding the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers wave and Saban's stable of children's entertainment. There was of course VR Troopers and Masked Rider who headed up the list, all who, like Power Rangers, used the same plastic robotic attire for its heroes and over-the-top but very colourful aesthetic to create some mad, quite frankly acid trip for young kids across the Western world. But Beetleborgs was a different type of entertainment for children. It filled a gap that even Power Rangers couldn't fill. It was just straight up weird, unkept, clearly strained by budget issues, union issues. Hell, the kid was zapped midway through the first season to change the actor's face to a new actor. And yet despite the rough edges, it filled a gap that only children in the 90s could appreciate. It was just good fun and rode the Saban wave well enough. That is, it was a good watch for kids who, quite frankly, didn't have enough overflowing content coming from their phones to know any better. And I think we were all better off for it. So who were the Beetleborgs and how did they come across their powers? So, the scene is a trio of preteens are dared going into a haunted house that is occupied by a trio of monsters. And the kids, they accidentally free what can be described as a genie that is trapped in a pipe organ. Well, I think the technical term in the show is phasm, and he's called Flabber, or as you watch it today, you'll probably call the terrifying blue morph of Jay Leonard. So Flabber, he offers to grant the kids one wish in return for freeing him. The kids decide they want to become their favourite comic book heroes, Beetleborgs. Flabber grants the kids' wish, but also accidentally unleashes the villains from the comics as well. Now the kids must use their new powers to get the villains back into the comics, and so set off the weirdest, trippiest, downright brilliant children's TV show of the 90s. Kids would watch in standard to low definition based off their aerial signal of their TVs, as the Blue Stinger Beetleborg, Green Hunter Beetleborg, the Red Striker Beetleborg would fight the forces of evil in their armour, accompanying power sets of telekinesis, super strength and super speed, split up between the three leads. With the scene set and the mad intro theme song playing loudly, Beetleborgs hyped up kids fueled on Sunny D and E-numbers that are now locked away in some vault, as audiences were ready to watch fights against the wicked Mangavores, led by the evil Vexo. So how did we get here? Well, like in true 90s copy and paste fashion, and following the success of similar route of bringing the Power Rangers to the mainstream, the Beetleborgs were an adaptation of Japanese TV for the Western audiences. Essentially, the Big Bad Beetleborgs was a rehash of the 1995 Japanese show Juko B-Fighter, also known as Beetle Fighter. Funny old world. As seen in the powered super suits of the heroes, Saban had chosen to take the initiative to create a more unique looking set of superheroes, ones that could easily be distinct from those of the past, and most importantly, provide a new merchandise revenue stream to global audiences for Saban. In terms of the costume look, I think this is what firstly stands out for the Beetleborgs and makes it so unique to anything we see today. Every superhero outfit is some boring CGI-infused nano contraption that lacks any physicality on screens today. The Beetleborg aesthetic, while not unique for the time, it created that sense of armour and physicality to a kid that made them long to wear such a ludicrous looking outfit. The beetle-like headgear provides such a unique appearance to each hero that, in itself, was an upgrade on simply relying on colours, as the Power Rangers do. It's the fact that you feel if you ran into a Beetleborg, you'd be knocked down on your ass, that really grabbed you throughout the confined lens of a TV in the 90s. So with a copy and paste look confirmed, and the action footage readily available from Juco B-Fighter, Saban just needed to make the story work for youngsters in the West, taking on board the somewhat Stephen King-esque trait of a youthful group exploring places they shouldn't. Mix that in with some Goosebumps overdrop. Beetleborgs had a setup that worked for the time, as it mixed companionship, visual comedic humour, and the gaining of superpowers to create a functional story that would support the sheer lunacy of the show and the imported Japanese action scenes. Beetleborgs ran for one season and was followed up by a sequel season, Beetleborgs Metallics, but as the creators were left with no more Juco B-Fighter and B-Fighter Kabuto footage to adapt and use for the show, Beetleborgs, like other adaptations before it, was no more. It's a legacy though that would continue, as various monster suits were reused for years to come for the Power Rangers, but for audiences in the West, Beetleborgs and the blue Jay Leno would never hit their screens again. So why do the Beetleborgs not get the recognition today that the Power Rangers still do, that legendary status of 90s action TV? Well, simply put, it just doesn't hold up when viewed today, unfortunately. And you know what? That's perfectly fine though. Beetleborgs was right for the time. TV didn't have to make a load of sense. It was an era of 4 to 5 channels, and as long as it kept you entertained and made you dream of fictional evil monsters and the ability to maybe be a Beetleborg one day, hopefully without the caveat of you being turned into a different actor from Magic, that's all it had to be. There's even a white Beetleborg who appears for like 4 episodes and is never seen again. You know what, fine, it makes no sense, but that's why the 90s for TV entertainment was so great. Not everything was micro-analysed within an inch of its life. You know, it feels like the imperfect rehashing of 90s kids TV is what we need a bit more of right now. It's a sense of innocence, imbalance, and simplicity of a world that no longer exists. Do you remember the Beetleborgs somewhere deep down in your subconscious? Or could you never quite get the TV aerial frequency right to witness some peak 90s TV lunacy? Either way, I hope you enjoyed this small trip down nostalgia road. And just remember, puffy blue-faced Jay Leno, he can't hurt you.
I'm free! Fat free, heavy, and home free. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, star.
That's it. I've had it. I'm out of here.
Yeah, come on.
Until next time.